Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about being smart. So let's get into it. So the question in question was, Frederick, are programmers and developers smarter than non-programmer human beings? That is a special way of formulating yourself, but I would say that it depends on how what you know other human beings do things as well, right? I hope we can agree on that. So that's a very broad definition, programmer and not programmer. I mean, our internal loving term for it is muggles. That's what we call everybody else, right? But if we talk about like the average intelligent, like the average person, then yes, depending on the programmer. Now, if we talk about, I mean, assuming now that we talk about a decent programmer who is actually a professional grade software developer who has like it's a quality software developer, then yes, on average they're smarter in terms of problem solving skills and these sorts of things. But that is because fundamentally what you do as a software developer is, as I like to say, you're converting a non-technical problem. Usually it's not always a non-technical one, but you're converting something into software. And for you to be able to do that, one part is to learn all the tools of the trade, so you know how to write code and make things happen in the computer and stuff like that. But you also have to take the time to really get good at meta thinking, if that makes sense. And in a sense, a programmer is, I would almost go as far as to say that I'm not sure if it's a completely fair assessment, but I hope that we can I hope that you can sort of see my thinking pattern for this. A programmer is a more practical version of a mathematician, if that makes sense. A programmer is, in a sense, a little bit like it's a lower form of mathematics, where you're basically taking a very theoretical way of thinking, such as mathematics, which is like one of the most abstract ways of thinking that you can imagine. You're breaking that down into a engineering skill set that allows you to create some type of computerized algorithm that basically does math. Well, it's not only math, but I hope you understand what I'm saying, for you, so that you can actually, as you're simplifying something to a point where non-technical people can use a software like a program or an automated process or something like that. I think that that's a fair assessment. And mathematicians, the really good ones, they are some of the most smart people that exist. Just like theoretical physicists and other scientists and so forth. So it's very difficult to say that a programmer is smarter than non-programmer human beings, because there are some really smart people out there, guys, like people who are geniuses. The thing that I think I'd like to credit the average software developer with is, though, that on average a software developer is smarter than most people. And that is, as I said, not because regular people are dumb per se or something like that. It's more that in order for you to be a software developer and be good at the job, you have to master something that very few people ever have to do, which is that you basically have to get good at problem solving. And it's such a generic thing, because even a mathematician, like some mathematicians, for example, like they're really only good. I'm not saying all of them, but a mathematician might just be good at the theory of mathematics, but they can't actually apply it in order to solve problems. A software developer has to be able to do that. That is the essence of what you do. In a sense, you are a very simple version of an inventor, or something like that, where you have some type of problem, or an engineer or something like that, which there's a need for you to figure out a solution to a problem and build something to actually fix that problem. And in order for you to even be able to do that, first and foremost, you have to understand the problem, and that usually all is like in the same breath. That means that you have to understand the person who has the problem and understand how their work works. Like what they do. Like you have to basically understand that human being, how they communicate, like communication skills. That's one of the things that are very important to us software developers. You have to understand how to convert their way of thinking and their way of doing whatever they're doing into software. And trust me when I say this, guys, very few people on average, which is sort of the problem with a lot of our things in society, is very few people are actually ever in a situation where they actually have to understand somebody else's job to the point where they can basically convert that into like a problem-solving sort of solution or things, and actually really take the time to do that. You mean, it's not like a software developer is equal to the person who's doing the job, because it takes practice and so forth and so forth. But I hope that you understand what I say when I say that few people even understand how to solve an actual issue. They are very good at pointing out a problem, but if you ask them to actually create a working solution to that issue, they're not going to be able to do it. Not at all. But that is what the programmer has to be able to do. And you get a lot of practice when it comes to this stuff, where you're literally in this situation over and over again. Someone comes to you and says, this is not working, or I need this to do something. They can't even tell you exactly how it's going to work. So you not only do you have to do the think, you have to understand that your stakeholder, you also have to think for them and help guide them until they realize what they actually need. And then when they finally realize that, well, then you're going to have to do all the technical stuff too. And then in many cases, if you're going to be really good at this stuff, you're going to have to be able to foresee what they are going to need before they even understand it themselves, because they can't even express the problem that they have in some cases, and you're going to have to help them guide them through that. So yes, I would say that for an average person, that is not in their resume. Even some areas of, depending on how you look at it, it's such a generic thing, I would say, to say, but there are people who are extremely intelligent, very smart in their field, who don't even have to do this, who do not have to actually do this sort of thing, and like they go to school, like it's a higher form of education and so forth. So when you can define for me what you mean by smart, and we can have a more in-depth discussion about the semantics around it, but in a very broad stroking sense, then yes, software developers and programmers and so forth, when they're good at what they do, are usually very smart people, and on average smarter than their above average intelligence, because it is a very complicated field to be part of. It's very fun, very rewarding, but it does take some serious brain power to do the job well. So what I want you to take away from this is that it's very hard to say who's smart and who's not smart, but if you want to be so vague, then I would say that yes, software developers, the good ones, are usually above average intelligence, because most of the reason behind it is because their entire job depends on their problem solving ability. That is in essence what it is. Like they can't just, sit and have somebody else explain to them how they should write their software. Like they can't just they actually have to take the time to learn how other things work. They have to actually inform themselves about the domains that they are working in and so forth, and learn enough about the other people's way of doing things in order to convert that into software. Because as I like to say, what you're basically doing is that you're converting something into code. And in order for you to be able to do that, you have to understand it. As in a similar way to a mathematician. If you're going to make a mathematical model for something physical, something actually real, you sort of have to understand how it works to do that. You can go the other way as well, but it's a different sort of process. For software developers, it's always the same thing. You have someone who has a problem, or there's some process or some goal that you're trying to achieve. First, you have to understand how to do it, and when you understand how it all is supposed to be working, and then you have to figure out how to do it in a better way, and then convert it into code. And that requires you to think in ways and face challenges that most people never face on average in an average lifetime. Most people never ever have to do this. They're usually more, I have a task, I do that task, and then when I'm done with that task, if that makes sense, you're more limited and more focused on specific things, rather than this broad type of generalist who has to kind of face off against quite a lot of different types of challenges. Whether or not that means that you're smarter than everybody else, I'll leave that to you, but I would say that it's a fair assessment is to say that most software developers are above average intelligence. Have a great day.